Original reaction. This is American F-35s, plural, encountered Chinese J-20s, another plural, over the Pacific. But channel Sandboxx. What? Why? I've never seen any other video, any other channel talks about this. What the fuck factors and didn't talk about this? This video is old enough. Year plus. This is my channel Sandboxx. So I watched a video, like people tell me the Sandboxx is a really great channel. It's not Wikipedia propaganda shit. It's a really good channel. It tells proper story, whether it's good or the biases are very little, I guess. Is that, I don't know, but multiple people told me that. So yeah, I watched the video from Sandboxx. It was awesome. So yeah, this is like big, right? F-35 J-20. So Lightning versus Chengdu. Chengdu is the, I think, warrior from Mongol Empire, or maybe I'm mixing it up. I'm pretty sure I watched enough of the Mongol Empire TV shows and movie. I'm pretty sure I heard of the warrior Chengdu. I don't know. But yeah, this is F-35 versus J-20. This is going to be interesting. It's not like F-35 versus Su-57. So usually people think about US and Russia that way. But because of the recent thing, I don't know what people think of Russia now. But yeah, China is like a rising power. Apparently, it's the biggest navy now because of the sheer numbers. But when you really like see the effectiveness, what is what, like not really. US is still number one. But yeah, so this is a rising thing. The newer aircraft carrier from China. So I'm guessing that can use J-20s as well, right? There was also like new. I haven't watched the video. I think I have to watch the video. But there's another video about like how Pakistan is buying. Was it J-20 or something else, but another stealth? There are multiple stealth planes, apparently, from China. So Pakistan is also buying that. So I don't know. Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. Remember, if you like my channel, don't subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react tomorrow. I like geopolitics, military equipments like planes, jets, tanks, things like that. It's technology. It's always interesting. So I've been watching that recently a lot. So if you haven't seen those reactions, check out the link in the description. Comment down if you want me to react specific videos like this or whatever. And yeah, let's do it.
It's finally happened. For the first time in history, as far as we know, American F-35 stealth fighters have had a close encounter with stealth fighters from another nation, specifically China's J-20 Mighty Dragon. Now, I don't want to lie to you, this was not a fight, but it was a...
Mighty Dragon? Isn't that Chengdu? Or is Chengdu the newer incarnation of J-20? I don't know. Because I'm pretty sure J-20s were not stealth planes. Then China acquired some documents and they applied it to their J-20 and then I think became Chengdu. So these are the fifth generation one, is it? I don't know.
Professional encounter that allows us to glean some things about how China is operating its growing stealth fleets. Let's dive into this and what American defense officials say they learned. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power.
Oh, it's a series, Air Power.
Before we get started, I just want to apologize for the late drop last week and just how crazy my schedule's been lately, but I am finally back in my office. Last week, I was in Naples, Florida for the Business Executives for National Security's 40th Anniversary Policy Forum and Gala, which was a crazy experience. I own a tuxedo now. I'll probably never wear it again. But I'm really happy to report that my whirlwind tour of the US is finally over, and I can get back to doing what I love to do, which is making nerdy videos like this. So let's dive right into it. For the first time in history, American stealth fighters have had a direct interaction with stealth fighters from a non-friendly nation. And that's a big deal, but I want to be clear that we're not talking about a dogfight here. We're talking about a professional encounter that we can use to gather intelligence and learn more about how China is operating their J-20 fleet. The bare bones of this story is that the interaction took place in March, somewhere over the East China Sea. We don't know how many F-35s or J-20s were involved, but according to American defense officials, they came into relatively close quarters. Now, interactions between military aircraft from different nations, even nations that aren't particularly friendly with one another, aren't uncommon. Barely a week will go by between headlines about American fighters intercepting Russian bombers off of Alaska's coast, or NATO jets and Russian jets.
There was also recently something about older Russian Soviet era plane came to Alaska or something, right? Very recent news. I don't know what that is about. But yeah, shit like that happens. That happens a lot in China, apparently, close to China because of Taiwan, right? China in past 8 years or so becoming way too bold, right? And Russia also send planes when like a NATO chief was going and just to like flex or something. Flexing happens a lot when it comes to jets. That is where it all happens. Nobody's going to do anything, obviously. So unless it's like, I didn't touch you, just like close nose to nose, but I didn't touch you and that's good enough, that kind of way.
Intercepting each other and escorting each other around the Baltic Sea. But as far as we know, there has never been a publicly disclosed interaction between stealth fighters from competing nations in the sky ever before, in large part because there just aren't that many stealth fighters out there that aren't operated by either the United States or one of its allies. The United States operates the largest fleets of stealth aircraft in the world,
right?
With somewhere between 150 and 186 F-22 Raptors in service, and somewhere over 450 F-35.
Yeah, so total F-35 count is over 1,000, but that's like all of it, US and its allies.
Joint Strike Fighters. The
That's an
U.S.
insane
also
number.
has a fleet of 20 operational B-2 Spirit bombers and at least 3 new stealth platforms in active development. But that
J-21?
shouldn't come as a surprise. After all, the United States was the first nation on the planet to field an operational stealth aircraft. Secretly, of course, back in 1983 with the F-117 Nighthawk. And America's monopoly on stealth aviation stretched for...
I think it was Soviet idea, if I remember correctly. Soviet scientists proposed this. I think US learned of it and like, oh, this is good, and they just did it first. And since they've been perfected, obviously technology, like US has the technology, right? So I don't know why Soviets didn't do it around that time or something. I guess it was like economical issues, who knows?
34 years after, all the way until 2017, when China first put the J-20 into service. In June of this year, I tallied how many actual operational stealth fighters there were in the world, with a bit of help from Twitter account Aerospace Intelligence and Thomas Nudick from the Warzone. And if you look at a list of the top 11 nations operating the largest...
Wow, okay. US is 600 plus, China 150 plus, Australia 44. Australia has it, I mean, obviously from US F-35s, right? Obviously F-22 only US has. Why would they are not giving it to? Then Norway and Israel. Israel also has F-35, Norway has F-35. So all of them are mostly F-35s. China has its own J-20, I guess.
Stealth fleets in the world.
Russia's fleet of 16 Su-57s ranked number 11. South. Huh? Russia's fleet of 16 number 11. Okay, these are F-35s, right? Oh yeah, I'm confused. Why does he say Russia's fleet of 16 Sus, which is a rank 11, and like South Korea? What the fuck? South Korea has Su-50? No, these are F-35s. He means Russia. Okay.
World, you get a number right around 1,000. But of that 1,000 operational stealth fighters out there, nearly 700 of them are all F-35s. In fact, 9 of the top 10 stealth fleets in the world are all comprised either entirely or largely of F-35s. The only nation in the top 10 list that isn't operating the F-35 is China, ranked number 2 with 150 or so J-20s.
Yeah, but what is a radar cross section? It's not even close to F-35 and F-22. Is that a stealth plane? It's like, is it a bird? No, it looks like a flying tank. Probably it's a jet. I mean, people can pick it up. Now you talk about like targeting system. Is that smaller radar section enough to fool targeting system? That's the question. We don't know. If conflict will tell us, I guess.
Now, just in case you're wondering where Russia falls on this list, they don't actually land in the top 10 at all. That's why I stretched it to a top 11. Russia's fleet of just 16 Su-57s ranks just below Italy, with 17 F-35s. And of those 16 Su-57s, 12 are hand-built prototypes that aren't particularly well finished. The only reason I even included them in Russia's tally is because Russia counts them as operational Su-57s. However ridiculous as that may be, I wanted to give them as fair a shake as I could. I also should clarify that
Yeah, I heard about they were relying on India agreeing with the Su-57 program and they didn't, and that's why it fell apart or something. I don't know, man. Really, how many stealth fighters India was gonna buy anyway? I mean, India is a big economy, I know, but come on, India alone can be the reason why Su-57 fell apart. I don't know. I feel like there's like many places where chain of command is failing in Russia, I guess. That's the problem, right? You're not even in top 10 when it comes to stealth fighter. Come on. I mean, Russia, we always seen Russia as like, if you're not talking about US, Russia is probably the most powerful military. That's how we thought for decades, right? China is creeping up. But come on, you're not, I mean, even before the conflict, this list was this, right? Like, Russia is not even top 10 when it comes to stealth fighter.
these F-35 numbers are based on delivered airframes. In other words, not the number of jets a nation has on order, but rather the number of jets a nation has on hand. Now, I tell you all of this really just to make sure you understand that when it comes to stealth aviation, China's really the only competitor for the United States anywhere on the playing field. China's J-20 and forthcoming J-31 are loosely intended to be a match for America's F-22 and F-35.
Oh, the Pakistan one was J-31s. They call it FC-31. I don't know the designation difference there. The Pakistan's gonna acquire FC-31s. Are they better than the J-20? Is that what's happening?
China's H-20 bomber program is widely believed to be based almost entirely on America's B-2 Spirit. Now, if you're watching this video, there's a really solid chance that you're well aware of what I call China's approach to counterfeit air power, or their tenacity for copying other nations' airframes in order to try to match their capabilities. That's totally true. In fact, just last week, I had the opportunity to meet with former Secretary of Defense Dr. Mark Esper, and that's what we talked about. But it's important to remember that China is quickly gaining experience both producing and operating these stealth aircraft. We've talked at length in the past about how hard it is to develop and build stealth fighters. The production tolerances just have to be incredibly tight. But we've also talked a great deal about how operational planning is totally vital to operating any stealth platform. The United States has got literally decades of experience doing this, while China is still learning the ropes. But it's that operational experience that was the focus of American defense officials' statements about this first interaction between America's F-35 and China's J-20. While Pacific Air Force's commander, General Kenneth Wilsbach, described the J-20 as, quote, nothing to lose sleep over, he did qualify that dismissive statement with some positive observations about how Chinese forces are learning to operate their first stealth aircraft. Now, I'm going to quote him here, but if you'd rather watch the video in full uploaded by the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies, I'll have a link for it down in the description. It's a bit early to say what they intend to do with the J-20, so really all we've seen it do is air superiority. But we noticed that they're flying it pretty well. We recently had, I wouldn't call it an engagement, where we got relatively close to the J-20s along with our F-35s in the East China Sea, and we're relatively impressed with the command and control associated with the J-20. In order to appreciate what he means about the command and control associated with the J-20, it would help for us to know a bit more about the fighter itself. Despite Russia's Su-57 Felon beating China's J-20 into the air back in 2010, Russia's limited defense budget and struggling economy have resulted in very slow progress, and...
wait a minute, Su-57 kicked ass of J-20s, is that what happened? So the only problem Russia has when it comes to that is like money. They can produce it, that's it. I mean, that kind of makes sense. I mean, Russia, Soviet Union also has like years of experience, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, China is like, one thing I'm going to say about China is that like they're learning fast, right? And I know about like from task and purpose, like the radar cross section is really small. Okay, not smaller as like F-22 and F-35, right? It's like big enough to be noticeable on radar compared to like the US version, but it's somewhat stealthy, right? And they could use that to train their system to detect, when they detect some kind of stealth fighter, how to attack. So it's like a sparring partner, right? How fighters spar with their own, I don't know, like let's say a middleweight fighter from UFC in their own coaching team. There might be a heavyweight there. There is like their sparring partner who fights a heavyweight. They both will spar and everything. Basically, something like that. They could use J-20s to train their systems. Like if the stealth fighter does come, how to respond. So yeah, who knows?
Just a lot of setbacks for its own stealth programs. As a result, China's Chengdu J-20 Mighty Dragon, which flew for the first time in 2011, managed to beat the Su-57 into service by a 3-year margin back in 2017. Since then, China has built as many as 150 of these fighters, though the figures you'll get from different sources tend to vary pretty widely. But even if the exact figure is a bit up in the air, they immediately eclipsed Russia's Su-57 production and are definitely in second place in terms of nations with the most operational stealth aircraft. The J-20's roots date back to China's JXX program, which started in the late 90s. By 2008, some 11 years after the F-22 Raptor's first flight, Chengdu's Project 718 was chosen to move forward as the basis for the country's first stealth fighter. Nevertheless, the design they chose would actually see significant revisions in 2014 before being declared combat ready, and then put into production in 2017. In what's sure to come as a shock to no one, like many of China's aircraft, evidence suggests the J-20 was not designed from scratch domestically. The aircraft appears to borrow heavily from earlier stealth fighter programs out of both the United States and Russia, specifically America's F-35 and F-22 programs, as well as Russia's now defunct stealth fighter effort dubbed the MiG-144. But while comparisons to the MiG are mostly based on design similarities, comparisons to America's fighters are based on China's direct access to a plethora of design documents from both stealth fighter programs. In August of 2014,
See, copying makes sense. This is survival. US and Russia both have like a long lead. That's understandable. But they literally just took the fucking documents and like copying it. Alright, I guess again, it's survival. China is at second number now, why the fuck not? So yeah, whatever they did, it worked, I guess. I don't know what to say. But there you go.
A Chinese national living in Canada named Su Bin, but who often went by Steven Su, was arrested for leading a hacking effort that stole over 630,000 files from American aviation firms like Boeing and Lockheed Martin, all for the Chinese government. This theft included blueprints for both the F-22 and the F-35 that, according to Su Bin's own emails that were later entered as evidence against him, would, and I quote, allow China to catch up rapidly with US levels and stand easily on the giant's shoulders. The single-seat, twin-engine Chinese fighter has a wingspan of just more than 42 feet, which is a bit shy.
Yeah, okay. First of all, if they have blueprint, why can't they make exactly same type of plane with exactly same type of radar cross-section? I'm guessing like material technology and things come in the way. Just because your blueprint doesn't mean you can just make it, right? If I acquire Mercedes' blueprint, not that I'm going to make a Mercedes C-Class in my garage. I don't know. Maybe that's the case.
Of the F-22's 44, and it's got an overall length of 69 feet 7 inches, which is considerably longer than the F-22's 62 feet. Like all stealth fighter programs, China's J-20 hasn't been without its developmental headaches, but without a free press in China, it's hard to know just how many. One we know for sure is that the nation has struggled to field its intended 5th-generation engine, which we call the WS-15. Now, the WS-15 was supposed to provide the J-20 with 44,000 pounds of thrust from each engine under afterburner, but to date, they haven't been able to get all the kinks worked out with it, and as a result, many of today's J-20s are actually flying Russian-sourced 4th-generation AL-31s, which are only capable of producing 33,000 pounds of thrust each. More recently, China started sourcing their own equivalent, which is the WS-10C. And in the latest models of the J-20, known as the J-20B, China has also began incorporating thrust vector control, or the ability to orient the jet's outflow nozzles independent of the aircraft. This is something that both the F-22 and the Su-57 have, but the F-35 doesn't. But depending on your perspective, there's good reason for that. Thrust vector control allows you to perform incredible maneuvers, but most of these maneuvers scrub a ton of airspeed, which can
Yeah, but F-35 can also, like, its engine can move, so does it need it?
leave you vulnerable to subsequent attacks or attacks from other aircraft. In fighter pilot culture, speed is life. And as a result, in a lot of the military aviation community, thrust vector
Yeah, I'm pretty sure F-35's moving engine can also, give similar capabilities, I think.
control has sort of fallen out of favor. It's really only valuable as a one-on-one dogfighting tool in extremely close quarters, which hasn't happened really since the advent of missiles. The F-35 has moved away from the idea that you need to be able to get into close quarters and box with your opponent, and instead uses more of a sniper approach, trying to detect, target, and engage opponents from much greater distances, leaning more heavily into things like sensor fusion and low observability than pound-for-pound hot rod performance, and there's a good chance the NGAD will follow suit. The J-20's top speed has been stated to be Mach 2, with a
No, I don't think NGAD will do that. NGAD will do dogfighting thing, even though they probably think it's not gonna work. I'm pretty sure they're still gonna follow it. F-22 can follow it too. They already have 35 for sniper level of thing with high mount capabilities. NGAD's whole role is going to be like close quarter type of thing. I'm pretty sure they're gonna do that. Right? You already have F-35. You're not gonna make something for the distance attack like that. What if you're caught in like a close quarter type of combat? I'm pretty sure they're not gonna leave that gap.
combat range of 1,100 nautical miles and a service ceiling of 66,000 feet. It's capable of carrying 4 medium or long-range missiles inside its primary weapons bay, as well as 2 additional short-range air-to-air missiles and small secondary bays on either side of its fuselage. The J-20 is often compared to America's air superiority F-22, but technically speaking, when it was originally designed, it was meant to fill a different role. While the Raptor was always meant to dominate air combat, the J-20 was originally meant to fly deep into enemy territory to conduct strikes against ground targets, more akin to the F-35's mission. And with that in mind, the canards make a bit more sense. The J-20 has been deemed by many an independent analyst to be quite a bit less stealthy than either America's F-35 or F-22. But it is thought to be pretty stealthy from directly head-on, which would be your primary concern in an attack platform. By now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, what's the J-20's radar cross-section, or RCS, and how does that compare to the F-22 or the F-35? But before I discuss that, I want to give you what's becoming my standard RCS disclaimer, which is that RCSs are incredibly difficult to calculate, and not often publicly disclosed. It's also really important to remember that an aircraft's radar cross-section changes depending on the angle of observation, or where the aircraft is in relation to the radar array. Now, if you've never heard the term radar cross-section before, technically speaking, it's the ratio of backscatter power to the power density that's received by a target. But that's
I'm pretty sure radar cross-section would always imply a cruising straight speed. Because if you're trying to get to a point, a radar's trying to detect you. Why would you turn and make maneuvers at that point? So the whole point is like an enemy jet is coming. Can radar pick it up? That's the first thing, right? Can it pick it up? Then later on the targeting thing comes. Then like it would be different, I guess. Like obviously radar section would change the angle, like from where you're picking it up and all that.
sort of technical jargon mumbo-jumbo. For our purposes, a radar cross-section is the size of an aircraft's radar return. The larger an aircraft's RCS, the larger it appears on radar, the easier it is to detect and potentially target. It's pretty universally understood that the J-20 has a larger RCS than either the F-35 or the F-22. It's really just a question of how much larger. But it is so much larger that a lot of people you'll find on the internet will argue that the J-20 isn't a stealth fighter at all. Likewise with the Su-57, which is even less stealthy. But the truth is, there's no governing body that decides how
Su-57 less stealthier than J-20, damn.
or where you can use terms like fifth generation or stealth fighter. They're really just industry shorthand that became cultural slang. In order to be a fifth generation fighter, you really just have to have been designed from the onset to limit your detectability. There's no requirement that you reach a certain point of low observability in order to be called a stealth fighter. You just need a design that leans hard into stealth. So while the Su-57 and J-20 are not nearly as stealthy as the F-35 or the F-22, they're both still considered fifth-generation fighters, the same way a Shih Tzu and a Pit Bull are both dogs. Now, there have been a number of different independent analyses into the J-20's potential RCS, sometimes calculating with the inclusion of radar-absorbing materials and sometimes not. Most of these expert assessments range from as small as 0.1 square meters to as large as 5 square meters, though I have seen some larger. Chances are good it's somewhere in between. But to give you a basis of comparison, America's F-16 is widely considered to have an RCS of around 5 square meters. The F-A-18 Super Hornet, operated by the Navy with no external munitions or gas tanks, is as small as 0.5 square meters. The F-35 is as small as 0.005 square meters, and the F-22 has an astonishing RCS of 0.0001 square meters. In other words, the F-22's radar cross-section is, at best, 50,000 times smaller than the J-20's, and at worst, only 1,000 times smaller. But it's still important to note, as American defense officials did about this interaction, that the J-20 is rapidly being armed with advanced beyond visual range air-to-air missiles. Weapons like the PL-15, which has a top speed above Mach 4 and a range of around 120 miles. A lot of that reach comes from being networked with the incredibly powerful radar in China's KJ-500 Airborne Early Warning and Control Aircraft, or AWACS. I'll go ahead and quote General Wilsbach again. Some of their very long-range air-to-air missiles are aided by that KJ-500. Being able to interrupt that kill chain is something that interests me greatly. I'll close out on one more quote from the general because it sums up the situation pretty well. We're seeing relatively professional flying, and it's still too early to tell exactly what they intend to do with the J-20. Whether it's going to be more like the F-35 that's capable of doing many missions, or more like an F-22 that's primarily an air superiority fighter that has some air-to-ground capability. Now, this quote matters because it highlights the fact that the J-20 is getting better every day, as is the F-35. These platforms are not static. In fact, the F-35's performance is so tied to its software that it gets regular software updates that actually make it more capable.
Like your iPhone. God, this is insanity. Obviously, all the computers are doing a job, right? People that are already working on the update is going to make it better and better, less error than, yeah, I can see that one. So the China's J-31, J-35, I'm pretty sure like KC-31, KC-35, I don't know, something like that. I'm guessing it's like the better version of J-20s. They're like trying to improve it or something.
Side by side, the F-35 is a more mature program. With better trained pilots, it's more technologically advanced, and it's far harder to detect or target. But the truth is, being the best fighter isn't everything. Both of these jets have to find a role within a broader military doctrine and be leveraged with an effective strategy in order to actually win a fight. So while the J-20 may be ranked second to last when it comes to the 4 stealth fighters in the world, China is a quick study, and they're all in on stealth. And with that ends yet another edition of Air Power.
Yeah, there you go. It depends. Look, it depends on way too many things. If US decides to attack China for some reason, because of Taiwan, fight is happening at the mainland China, even with the bad stealth and everything, enough of support and being at home, J-20s would be too a bit overpowered at that time, right? I mean, then again, US's logistic is really crazy. They might just organize enough of shit around there that they might as well be US is there, US mainland is that type of way. But usually any other country trying to invade some country away from their mainland would run with many problems. So you need to be really OP if you want to do that. And defending country with all the equipments they have already there with the proper chain of command is gonna have like somewhat edge. So who knows? But yeah. What was American F-35s encounter Chinese J-20s over the Pacific by the channel Sandboxx. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.